1. Welcome to another Mish-Mashing Battle Lounge with the 2MK team. This is Rillian back from hiatus, let's say. Probably haven't heard from me in a while. Long enough that even if you were just going through our videos on YouTube, you probably didn't get to hear me yet for the day. We are, as always, playing Street Fighter V on our Monday Mish-Mashing, and today you can find our lounge by searching for 3 rounds, first 2 with character select on. Character select is on today mainly because we expect, given the flows and the timings, everything that's been going on in the world, to see more players from various places, and we want to give them any options they want for changing character. Since today's work isn't really about matchups per se, it's about something closer to spacing. A zoning character is a good option to start with because of what exactly it requires for both Sagat and characters like Dalsim. Trying to just get in against zoners normally means that they have control of the timing, the advantage, they know what to do. But it can definitely be just as effective, if not more so, to stay away from them for a little bit to zone the zoner and give yourself some time to breathe, rather than letting them fall into their rhythm, which will both give them confidence and let them keep up a specific flow. After all, with their space control, your goal being to hit them means that life gets fairly difficult for you, since their characters are designed to prevent this, and yours are probably designed for something else. It might be something else that you don't feel as if you're achieving. If you can't get in, but this is in fact part of what makes it so effective.
Round 1.
In order to defeat zoners, despite the fact that they don't necessarily do a lot of damage themselves, what one often needs is the ability to take very quick situations, stuff that basically is, oh, I saw this, I managed to land this hit, this stray hit, and then knowing, even if you can't continue your combo, what is probably the best thing to do after that stray hit. It is something that comes up a lot and can be considered a form of footsies, but it doesn't feel like regular footsies tends to feel. For example, a moment ago you saw the wolf land the crouch medium kick and then jump. Against most players this won't work because they're expecting something to happen there. They're probably buffering something or just waiting in general. One of the first things you learn to do here is when you land an attack that you don't think is necessarily going to be able to combo, you defend in some way, either block or neutral jump, something that will probably make your opponent miss whatever it is they plan to do next. Neutral jump is actually a really good option because most characters, if you've managed to only barely clip them at max range, you definitely don't have a combo, but you didn't get a knockdown either, then there's a good chance that your opponent has no way to hit you if you neutral jump. They can get back into a space, and for zoners, this doesn't mean they don't get to do their thing, but it definitely means that they're often on the back foot. They're a little bit more confused as to what's going on here. Since they can't afford to not expect the jump to be a forward jump, but they can't just afford to, okay, well, I didn't get hit, I threw out my big normal. A lot of the time the normals they throw out don't help their case, or in the worst case scenario, you do get hit because Guile can do it and Manat can do it, but these don't necessarily do a lot of damage. Still, that is really just the first way to think about this. The realization that because you can't continue your offense, that you now might as well use your mobility in some way. You can see here, for example, that it's fairly easy for the zoning character to get really comfortable. And once they're comfortable enough, the confidence does the rest.
Round 2. Fight.
Relaxation, you could say. But of course, interestingly, the only way you can get a player like this to be less relaxed is to attack them less. This also helps because most players who play zoner characters already have to build up this sort of mindset. When your projectile hits, that's all that happens. If your opponent took a little damage, if they were relatively far away, that's it. Therefore you have to be able to spend a decent amount of time thinking, well, my projectile hit, but I'm not necessarily all that invested in what happens next. I might do something interesting, but it might not really be about trying to make sure I do more damage. And sometimes it's not about throwing the projectile again either. So it looks like today's going to be a push to break Bruce Leroy's calm, assuming they stick around.
Round 1. Fight.
One other good way to break the calm of a zoner is to just walk. Blocking projectiles on reaction is almost always possible. Putting yourself at any given spacing lets them measure all sorts of things. However, just walking forward sometimes, once you're outside of their buttons range, and sometimes even when you're in it, is enough. You can definitely see that this Sagata player has built up a lot of speed.
Round 2.
And a lot of that speed comes from being so calm about things. It does help that characters who have command grabs do get to push on players who have this type of defense, so you can get a little something out of it. But to getting close to the command grab means you're likely to have changed your mindset and will just get more projectiles thrown at you. Particularly gutsy people who don't care a lot will just uppercut you or something on your approach.
Sagat wins.
The most difficult thing about facing opponents like this is probably the fact that as you get better, normally you think of, okay, what's my opponent going to do? And you spend a lot of time thinking about how to get around whatever your opponent is going to do. But an opponent this fast isn't really going to do anything. They don't necessarily have an intent until you move. And that can be really off-putting because you have to learn to play offense from your own side in much the same mindset. It's not as if your opponent has no plan, but most of their plan involves staying at a range and using options that negate any aspects of yours plan. You can't have a plan against Sagat throwing projectiles unless your character can reach from that spacing and can react in time to the projectile being thrown to do something about it. Nikali could, but it's still enough of a difficulty and could just be blocked mostly. But now we have a situation where we have a character matchup that could get through this, and a player with the mindsets mostly required to do it. In general, Just Fine spends more time than most of our team thinking about what will happen after minor hits, and focusing on aspects of movement that don't necessarily intend to hit the other player. You can already see that this turned into a much more sedate match. Much more actions from Bruce Leroy involving, I'm backing off now because I can't afford to just stand here. My plan has to be to get away from you a little bit more at least. Because you're doing all these things that, while they aren't necessarily difficult to stop, the timing's different. I can't just go, well, you're about to do something, so I'll prime myself. This is more so unnerving than you'd expect. Of course it helps that Rainbow Mika does a decently high amount of damage, but the situation we're referring to hasn't really changed too much. Probably the only real advantage here is that Sagat has enough range that Mika can't stand within a spot where it's ambiguous if she's going to do one move specifically or she's going to dash. So Sagat does have that going for him. She can't stand in that range where it's easy to defend and then maybe suddenly dash, or suddenly dash into a whiffed normal. She has to actually do her work. But we ended up 80 seconds into that round for the reasons mentioned before. And honestly, on both sides that was played basically exactly as it should be for this level. And quite a bit above that, really. There's less very technical pieces involved compared to high level play, but the idea of what both players are trying to do here is about right regardless of how else you look at it. just find also has the strongest tendency to sometimes just let the opponent do moves. Which is different from, for example, my, oh, I don't feel like moving right now, I don't think you're gonna attack, let me just drop my guard because it doesn't even matter. Because the way that gets one hit is entirely different from what she loses when she does it. All she loses here is that occasionally she could have gone for pressure and didn't, and therefore didn't get a certain amount of damage. This could be easily balanced out by all the times she doesn't get hurt for going in too hard and getting uppercut or something. But here's the walk down as mentioned. And that worked entirely because they actually took the hit instead of blocking. But unfortunately that drop is probably going to be stressful. Given that it was one of the bigger chances for the comeback. This is a really common thing to happen to people actually. If you've dropped something, it's a decent chance your mind is going to switch to offense mode. You're going to attack harder because you're frustrated about it, or just thrown off in a way that going back to, well, I guess I have to let this go now, I have to quote unquote give up. I dropped my combo and now my opponent's probably going to win and I just have to kind of stand here and let them. Most of us don't like the feeling of stand there and let them. But it won't necessarily change the situation against this type of player. One of the first things you have to learn is to not feel too strained about dropped combos, but that requires actually training on bots and against people where the feeling has to be simulated. You don't feel bad when you drop your combo on a bot unless you're like at 9 points and want to get to 10. This is of course referring to the bots you can find at 2-mk.org, which are not really bots but rather long inputs for your training mode actions. Well, not that long. Some of them are though. Sagat in particular has a lot of relatively long ones. Bison has a strong advantage here because Bison's V skill allows for absorbing of Tiger shot from far off, without too much effort really, and unlike Guile who can generally close the space fast enough and booms are slow enough for this to work out really well, Sagat is much less capable of this. If anything, Sagat normally would need to throw faster attacks in the hopes of making sure that Bison doesn't actually get anything. But that part at least is still active. Bruce Leroy is ready for many things.
Round 2. Fight.
And just as was in Street Fighter 4, that readiness of Sagat's combines well with the readiness of this player and the relatively high amount of damage Sagat can do in the same situations compared to both characters. It's a small nuance of Sagat as a character, but if you've played other characters like Cody, or even Bison to some extent, although Bison's better at this than most, you'll know that landing one hit, particularly a special, doesn't mean you get to convert into big damage from there. Sagat has probably the highest number of I can just convert after this specials and normals in the game. You could think of it as having better juggle than most characters, but it's closer to intentionally having links from to begin with. There's a lot of hit stun, a lot of pushback. There are definitely positions where move A doesn't combo, but if you've played Sagat long enough, you know he has a way to do it for most moves and a lot of control to make sure that when your opponent does get hit, you're in the position to keep on going. What we see here though is the usual situation coming up. It's difficult once the life lead is lost for a zoner to really make another character miserable, especially if they were good enough at close range that you didn't really want them near you in the first place. Bison's oppressive enough, especially against Sagat, to more or less just keep on hitting buttons. There are definitely ways out of it, and Sagat can use the V skill to power up. In fact, that's something you could spend a lot of time doing in this matchup without basically any downside. Just to give you that option to uppercut your way out of stuff Bison chooses to do. Managed to get through it without having to use any of the meter, which is always good because opening Gambit EX anything from Bison against Sagat is just too good. Cause all Bison really wants, he doesn't care if you block it or not, he just wants to get in enough to hit buttons. So it helps to have some meter for backup in case you feel as if that situation is not going to go your way. So you can see a lot of this movement and spacing coming up in tiny things. Crouch under one move, stand just out of range of a different one, step just into range of a third.
Sagat wins.
But let's move on to the next part, assuming that they actually keep going. Here we go.
Round one. Fight.
Discussing how damage is taken. Today we've got zoning to start. And this sort of situation can, for example, be discouraging when you think, well, I've been fighting for 20 seconds, I haven't landed a hit, my opponent has hit me with like 5 fireballs, half my health is gone. But Bison could take away half of Sagat's health in basically one interaction. So your real question is whether or not you've gained anything from the situation that led to you taking those fireballs. If you're playing well, the answer is usually yes. At some point, Sagat had to backdash. And if you've managed to make a Sagat backdash basically once for nearly every fireball that hits you, you probably are still doing pretty good, even if it doesn't feel like that. Now that does also depend on how good your character is at dealing damage once they've gotten someone to the corner, and of course on your opponent's skill at getting out of the corner before anything happens. Seems more so like it's laggy coming through to here than laggy in itself.
Final round. Fight.
Two badashes so far, and not much damage taken at all. Okay, that jump would make me believe that the lag is a bit much on their side. But movement everywhere. The benefits of having that particular type of jump back heavy kick. It's definitely little things about your character that you can learn to make use of eventually. That particular style of jump back heavy kick helps a lot in a lot of ways. Normally only allowed to be used by zoning characters and one or two of the footsies ones. I guess it was not holding up for them. And therefore, here we go. I'm probably not going to have anything to say for this one. So enjoy the match.
Final round. Fight. You win. Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Final round. Fight. You win. It's go time. Let's do this. Waterloo Base at night. Harin Kanzuki, Akuma.
We'll show you the divide in our class.
Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! You win! Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Final round. Fight! Let's do this. Underground Arena. Karin Kanzuki. Nekali. Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Let's do this. do this. Round one. Fight! What? What? Round two. Fight! Final round. Fight! Mika wins. Round one. Fight! Let's do this. Round one. Fight!
Ah, here's another match where our focus topic of the day is likely to come up a lot.
Round two. Fight!
This particular flow with the timings for the jumps ends up reminding me a lot of Weapon Lord, which we played for a little bit this weekend.
Fight!
I won't go into details, just know that you can usually jump out of things instead of backdashing in that game. And it comes up fairly often here too. Not in every matchup. This is going to be one of those days. We've done more research, we've reset more stuff, we've checked more connectors, and yet here we are.
Let's do this.
Since that's broken my flow, I'll probably go back to being quiet for now, and we'll see what comes up the next time a useful match does.
Harin Kanzuki. Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! You win! Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight!
I'll show you the divide in our class.
Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! You lose. Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! You lose. Let's do this.
This mirror match isn't often a source of what we're talking about today, but it can be. And based on the fighting styles we've been seeing from our Nakali so far today, there's a chance we'll get something to talk about. Specifically, they tend to fight a lot from the range where getting serious advantage doesn't really come up. But in a mirror match, the question is almost always timing, even after that has happened. There are times where the pushback matters a lot though, and Nakali's very fast sweep helps a lot with this situation. One important factor to consider in games like this is that even if you can't make a punish, when your opponent does a move that leaves them significantly disadvantaged, it means you have a lot more freedom than you did before. Sometimes that freedom is easy to use based on your character's strengths, and sometimes really not. And Nakali in fact has very few safe ways to use it. But this isn't the character where you have to worry so much about being safe all of the time. This is a character where you can go for punishes to sweep that involve micro walk forward into stuff, using your V skill, using the opening dagger. Or even just repositioning yourself so that your opponent's next attack is easier to whiff punish. So often, rather than thinking too hard about what one is not managing to punish, you can think about what else you can use that space for. It does seem that we got a bit more of the close range pushback style trades, so there's less of what I was forgetting about in this match. So I may not have more to say this time.
Nakali wins. Round one. Fight.
It does, however, let me talk about the contrast, which isn't something that's necessarily obvious to players in the lower ranks. There are basically two ways to approach this style of thing. Making sure you get to take your hit where if your opponent was defending, you get the optimal pushback to make yourself safe, maybe even to get a little advantage. And you're seeing that style of play a lot right now. The other option is to lower your guard a little bit and be ready to whiff punish your opponent. But generally, the moves that are used for one are not the moves used for the other. For example, Nikali gets more out of whiff punishes and similar with stand light kick and stand medium kick. And in some cases actually crouch light kick. Than the stand heavy kick, which is mostly a way to push your opponent back so that you don't have to deal with anything too crazy following up. A lot of the time, walking, hitting from max range, walking back one step and getting ready by hitting medium kick is also a perfectly valid answer, but with much less chance for big conversions and much less chance for making sure your opponent isn't going to do something ridiculous. You're opening yourself up to them doing crazier things in order to get incremental advantages over the more sensible things. And you always have to be able to make that call based on the person you're fighting and just your general mood, honestly. It helps to not be too predictable in either direction. But there's not much you can shift there. When you're playing a character like Nikali, you're basically just hitting buttons in neutral because none of Nikali's specials have the same sort of trickiness. In fact, almost all of them have the exact same properties as the normals and what we were just discussing. If you can hit with Nikali's specials at the right spacings, you're in a better position. Rising Light is more so the opposite, where you get into the correct spacing and then hit it expecting things to go well, but the feeling is the same. You at least can use Rising Light the same way you use a medium kick or a stand light kick, but because it doesn't tend to hit all its hits at that point, and trying to make sure it does is extremely unsafe, you'd probably be better off just hitting one of those. This is a little bit more likely to demonstrate the point, but is also likely to not be visible, so don't count on me saying much.
Round one. Fight.
This matchup tends to make Juri work a little harder than many of her others. While she does get a lot out of her max range hop kick, and interestingly, max range light pinwheel, the overall flow of the match tends to favor Nikali simply because light hitboxes don't interact well with basically what are the heaviest hitboxes in the game.
Round two. Fight.
Juri also doesn't have a lot of good ways to make use of her various V skills and Fuha charges, except as a way of controlling the way the opposing player is thinking. That is still valid though. You can frustrate them for long enough and then use the hop kick. And you can similarly use the light pinwheel at the last moment, or leave the opponent without the feeling you're going to use it, and get one of the few times where a dash up throw is a thing Jury cares about. Because her pushback is also lighter, she's able to keep on hitting more buttons in sequence than most other characters, and being able to do that while still having two moves that deal with the situation well at that range, means she definitely can get that dash up throw at least some of the time. However, it is riskier than a lot of other situations simply because she's doing it from such close range that the opponent is likely to be hitting something at some point and end up doing their damage. Fortunately for Jury, she can do a lot of the same thing, her light kick and her light punch both standing. Do a good job of filling that space as well. But her strongest option in this is probably axe kick, simply because the axe kick makes the opponent have to hesitate more. And you can see it play out that way. The axe kick is not necessarily meant to hit the opponent, but if they've seen you whiff axe kick a couple of times, if they're not ready to whiff punish it, which is really hard to do, then they'll start to look for that move and get hit or taken off guard by a bunch of other things. In other words, it's a beat. She gets to give herself time without moving, even more importantly. The opponent can't really dash into it or do certain styles of attack, or they'll get hit. And the animation is long enough to give the Jury player some time to figure out what they want to do. While the Kali can absolutely do a lot of damage on the whiff punish of that move, he's definitely not one of the characters more suited to doing it without meter. And then you get this situation. Because she can actually confirm that move so easily, it's easy to set up scenarios where it's like, oh, I just need to get in now. If I happen to clip you, I'll attack. Not necessarily attack with any strong plan in terms of how to open up the opponent or make sure she gets the damage, but she definitely gets more out of it than a lot of other characters. Since the only other character that has a similar move that can be used in this way is Ryu, and Ryu's moves out of it don't tend to lead to safety. If you have played a grappler before, you're probably able to see right now those little spaces where the dash up throw could work. Specifically, Jury moving around in a way that will put her just out of range of another move against an opponent who really doesn't have a lot of options in terms of moves to use in that space. But we're back to a point of silence from me, given that it's too unlikely that this match will flow in that way very much.
Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Necalli wins. Round one. Fight! Akuma wins. Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Nekali wins. It's go time. Let's do this. Nekali.
See you.
Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight. You win. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. You lose. Round one. Fight.
Alright then, as you can see the lounge is winding down, so this will be our last on-stream match of the night. You can of course find out about what is going on for the rest of the week on our Twitter @2_MK_FGC at around stream time each day. We tend to announce the current stream, if there will be one, in about that 7 o'clock to 7:10 or 7:15 time period. And if you want to know what to check for, we often have a Tuesday Train Guilty Gear Exard Rev 2 lobby, PS4 of course, on Tuesdays, our Tuesday Train, as well as a Thursday Dead or Alive 6 60 times lobby. And of course, not to mention next week, same time, same place, we will have at 7 p.m. US Eastern Time this standard Street Fighter V Mish-Mashing Monday Battle Lounge. If in the meantime you're looking for something to do, you can check out all of those bots that Rillian was mentioning earlier on stream by going to our website 2-mk.org/bots. There you can find all sorts of bots and tools for this game and any of the others that we tend to play and have worked on much.
Round 1.
So thank you for stopping by, and hopefully thank you for stopping by again next time. We'll leave you with DeWolf and Cosmic Wolf facing off in the Nikali Mirror match one last time this evening.
Round 2. Fight. Final round. Fight. Nikali wins. Round 1. Fight. Final round. Fight. Nekali wins.